very good evening and a warm welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have your company. Tonight, a key conversation in collaboration with the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa, SIHA, and the African Women Development Fund. We launch the Street Vendors Manifesto and have a conversation about why it is important. I'll very quickly introduce my guests for this evening. I'll start over there. We have Esther Namboka Emoru, who is the Executive Director, Girls Forum International. Esther, it's a pleasure to have your company.
Thank you so much for having me, Josephine.
All right. Right next to Esther is Brenda Aber, who is the Uganda Area Coordinator for SIHA Network. Brenda, it's good to have you.
Thank you, Josephine.
All right, and finally, usually when we have these conversations, people say, where are the voices of the women's vendors? So joining us also in the studio is Florence Achiro, who is the Treasurer, Naguru Women Cooperative Society Limited. Thank you for joining us, Florence.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Florence, this really is your conversation, so I'm going to start with you. You are a street vendor. I would like you to give us a clear understanding of a street vendor. What is your life like on a daily?
My life in a daily, I just go in the street to sell my things, then I get money. From there, I come and take care of my children.
How many children do you have?
I have 6 children.
You have 6 children.
Mm-hmm.
What do you sell on the street, for example?
I sell mangoes, I sell banana, ginat, strawberry. Sometimes I sell season too.
All right, and so you're on the street from what time in the morning to what time?
I first go early to buy things from the market. If I'm going for work, I used to go at 11, midday. Then I come back at 6 or 7.
Is this before curfew or even on a daily before COVID-19?
Just daily before COVID.
Okay, so
because I have to come back early and take care of the children.
Okay. How have you been handling during this COVID-19 period?
This COVID period was not easy because we was being locked down. We have, our life as a street vendors. We have to go and vend, then we come back home. At the moment, everything was locked. Life was not easy. We was been lacking so many things. Feeding was difficult. And even me myself, I have nothing to do because I have to vend daily, and that money is not enough even to keep it. At the time of COVID, I end up nothing completely. The life was not easy.
So how did you survive?
I survived, let me say like this, by God. For me, I failed because I'm just like that. I have nothing.
Is business back to usual now that they've opened up and you can go back to the street?
Yes, at the moment they open, I go back slowly in the market. Still not even easy because during this lockdown, others lose work, no customer, no money totally. We used to buy things, and sometimes you buy a thing of 20,000, about 30,000. You sell like for 3 days, and sometimes you end up your capital is also finished.
What are the biggest problems for you as a street vendor?
The biggest problem as a vendor, we used to go early in the market. Our biggest problem of going in the market, because we have to go early, sometime at 10, at 4
a.m.
4 a.m. Sometime at 3, because we have to go early and you get a cheapest price. If you go late, you cannot even get cheapest price, and sometimes you get bad product. During from home going to the market, we meet some challenges in the way. Sometimes we meet other guys who do bayai. They can even grab us. They can even beat us. They can rape us also sometime on the way. Yes, what we normally do as a neighbors, we have to gather ourselves together. You alone, you cannot manage.
So you have problems getting to and from the market to buy what you're going to sell throughout the day. What else is a struggle for you during the day when you're on the street?
When I'm in the street, sometimes we face some challenges in the way also, because when we are in our working place, we move a distance, we can get tired. Sometimes we can meet some customers just come and start abusing us. Now we end up just like that, because life as a street vendor is not easy.
How far, where do you operate from? For example, you, where do you operate from? Where do you start your day from, and where does your day end?
I normally go early in the market. I first come back home, I prepare tea for my children, then I start moving, like Kampala Road, coming to Uganda House, and all around. You know, we don't have permanent place. We just move around Kampala, the whole of Kampala, to get money. If we finish, then we go home.
Have you ever been taken off the street by city authorities, maybe?
Yes, those people, we meet them on the way. Sometimes we meet them, they say the law was not allow us to sell our thing. They sometimes grab our thing. We end up nothing, because we cannot even follow them.
All right.
They said yes.
All right, thank you, Florence. I guess it gives us a better understanding of what you do and the challenges you face along the way. So to bring in Brenda and Esther, what are we seeking to address with the Street Vendors Manifesto? Are the things that Florence is talking about part of the things that are covered in the manifesto?
Thank you so much, Josephine. Just the way Florence has just mentioned, I happen to have actually disguised myself as a woman vendor one time, because I really wanted to know what is beneath these women that we look at with baskets on their heads. But what I came to find out was really a bit deep. Just the way she mentioned that they wake up in the wee hours of the night when the world is still asleep, and many of them have been raped, some have been kidnapped, some have always been robbed. Even if they have very small capital on them, the little they have is actually taken away. I happen to have gone through the same. We arrived in the market at about 4 a.m. And at that hour...
Esther, just take us step by step on how you prepared to go and be a street vendor.
Okay.
What time you left for the market, so
Yeah.
we just get a clear picture of what it's like.
Oh, okay. I happen to have befriended one of the women vendors. That time I had had an experience of, I happened to have bought some bananas from a woman vendor. But as she was selling to me those bananas, KCC officials came and grabbed the basket. Of course, she had a baby at the back, on her back. She ran away. KCCA also took off with her merchandise. I remained with the unpaid bananas in my hands. I couldn't trace where she was. And that was 2017. By then, there were no many NGOs working on the plight of the women vendors. It really humbled me that I really wanted so much to know what more do the women vendors endure every day, what are their challenges. But given my capacity as an executive director, I wouldn't, it wasn't comfortable for me to just go there with my titles. Therefore, I had to dress up locally, I had to get humble. So I befriended one of the women vendors, and I told her, you know, I am going to pretend to be your sister who is being introduced into the vending industry. So we woke up at about 3 a.m. Of course, it was very dark. We were moving from the side of, what is it called? Namuongo Wabigalo area. That's why we agreed to sleep together. We agreed to spend the night together because that would make us move faster. So, but as we were moving, there's nobody moving on the streets. The only people you're seeing are the idle men who seem to be drunk on alcohol. Some are having drugs. So we made sure that we maintained the main street. Some, of course, attempted to follow us up, but somehow we had to keep up the pace of moving very fast. And it got very worse when we reached Go Down. Go Down is a certain area around the industry area. It is more risky. So she told me, please hold your bag very close, because now this is one of the dangerous spots. So we moved through, and somehow we succeeded to reach Nakawa. Of course, we were finding some other women who are moving in groups of 4, also carrying their baskets. They also going to Nakawa.
Okay.
Yeah. So we arrived in Nakawa. That was around now 4 a.m. Of course, it's a bit crowded, because that's when many of them are buying their merchandise, and that's when the commodities from up country are also arriving. But my first experience was that almost many of the men who were around got to know that I was a first timer in the market, and each of them got interested in knowing who am I, and of course, and their focus was mainly on my body. Many of them were on some would touch my bum, some would try to touch my breast. So, and each time I would try to say, no, don't do that. The person who was introducing me into industry was telling me, no, please stay calm. This is the order. You know, it happens. For us, we are used. You know, it is how business should be. Otherwise, if you get a little tough, some of these will even sell us merchandise at an expensive price, or some of them will find us as if we are not really agreeing with what they're doing. So I had to keep quiet. So it was a bit of a challenge. By the time I left the market, I had gotten advances from the people who are bringing the merchandise from up country, the distributors, the fellow male vendors who were in the industry. We had even the market leaders. For those, they were even very strategic. They were asking me, oh, you're coming for the first time. Oh, we can introduce you into this business. All you need is just take up a phone number. We shall introduce you. And within a short time, actually, they want to put you on the side and engage you very privately. So I told them, no, let me just hang around my sister so that she takes me through. I will definitely come back. So they make sure that, they were making sure that I have to return. So I carried my basket. We moved on the streets. But Josephine, I want to tell you that throughout the journey, I made the most sales. This lady is a bit older, but almost many of the buyers, especially the men, were buying from me, but with an aim of getting back to me after. And by the time we reached the city center, there are different groups of men. Some are special hire drivers, some maybe selling merchandise also as well. Each one of them has a different approach. So they know that I'm a new vendor, therefore I'm looking for survival. So for those ones whom I would find in a bit of well-to-do shops, they are promising me, no, you don't have to do that kind of work. You come, I'm going to introduce you to this new business. Then there are those ones who tell me, no, we are the ones who know where the business is. Please give us your number, you know. But what I would say is that we ended, my worst experience came on a construction site. We happened to have approached a construction site around that side of Arua Park. There was a new building that was coming up. So I had my avocados. Of course, I had bought a lot of it. By that time, I'd sold a number of them. So when we reached this construction site, she told me, now, here, we sell to these construction workers. But in this construction site, the boss has to first assess how you look, how I looked, before the other builders take a step towards you. So I said, okay, I'm going to wait and see if at all I would be if this manager would be
if you qualify.
Yeah, if I qualify. Of course, the manager is not Ugandan. Is one of these people who come to manage the construction site. And indeed, when we arrived with my basket, the construction manager had to look at me from the head to the toe, made his quick assessment and said, come. So I moved closer, said, okay, now I am buying this basket of avocado for all my builders. Of course, if I was a true vendor at that time, that was enough excitement. So he told me, give all of them, give all of them. Do you have more? I had to send more. I had to send more baskets from Nakawa to make sure that they arrive at the spot. And he bought everything. So time came for payment. And he told me, come, I pay you. Now, usually there is a room that is usually completed faster than the rest to make sure that the managers change from there. It's more of a resting place. So I moved there to see, okay, where I'm. Of course, the lady had told me that what he means by telling you go and be paid. He's trying to tell you that get in there. And of course, the one way of one condition of paying you will have to him making a sexual advance. And I had it in my head, so I moved to the room. And when I just tried to peep inside the room, of course there is a bed there, and I just told him, no, I cannot proceed from this. I was just at the entrance. Told him, no, I can't proceed, but you can pay me. Said, no, get in. I have to pay you from here. I said, no, but you can still pay me. I said, if you don't want, you go. So I tried to hang around for some time with my friend, and my friend told me, no, he's serious. That is how business is done. And of course, I also looked at, there were other women vendors who are bringing food, supplying food to the same site. You can see a woman who has come to demand money. And you just see them disappearing in certain rooms, and they take some time. And after some time, they come out of these incomplete rooms. So, and the lady told me, no, that's how these ladies earn a living. You have, in order for your merchandise to be bought, you have to exchange your body.
You have to give back.
So actually, Josephine, these women do not look at only the baskets they carry. Behind what they sell every day is an exchange of their body. You find many of them are having children, up to 8 children, but they do not know the father of almost each of those children, because at every selling point they had to befriend a gentleman so that they take territory of that area. They move to another area, maybe it's a taxi park. They have to befriend a gentleman there. Therefore, they are going to exchange their bodies. That's a pregnancy. They go to a construction site. They have to befriend somebody there. That's a pregnancy. So the challenges are quite immense when it comes to the vulnerability of these women vendors.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I have a couple of questions for you, though, Esther, in regard to that. But let's take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, and tonight we are speaking about the women street vendors, and we're launching the Women Street Vendors Manifesto. Esther, while you were speaking, I had a question for you, but before I ask that question, Florence, the things that Esther has been saying, is this what happens to you? Has this happened to you?
Yes, this thing happened, not to me, but for other fellow women. Because mostly most vendors, we are single, others are widows, others they have their husband. Some people, they do that thing because other men in the street, they can disturb asking for selling your body. But for other people, they can do. It is happening. Even everywhere we are moving, that thing can happen. But according to your situation, you can change. If you don't like, you can leave. That is why this thing is happening to other fellow women. Mostly those who don't have their husband. But for you, if you have husband, you cannot do that thing.
How do you protect yourself? How do you, I mean, even when you have your husband, you still have to go home with money. That's why you're doing the job.
But like me, exactly, me, I can't do that thing. I can't change my body to get money. I have children, I have my husband. I'm just looking for the money to survive the situation.
So what do you tell a man like that?
I just tell him, I said, if you want to buy my thing, you buy. But if you want me to change my thing with your money, you leave my thing.
If he has already taken the things,
I just leave even the money.
All right. Esther, so we are curious to know, I'm sure it's not just me, did you get your money back? Did you eventually get into the room? What happened? What did you do?
Up to today, I never got paid because, first of all, for me, it was something I was just experiencing to find out. And indeed, by evening, because I left that site with this lady at about 7 p.m., and this gentleman had conditioned that you either get into the room and I handle your payment from there, or there is no payment. So I had to leave without the payment. But after about 3 days, this gentleman, I think, did some kind of investigation with this lady afterwards, because he threatened her, told her, you know, if you do not tell me who is the other lady you came with, because there's no vendor who would just leave her money back. So if you do not tell me who's this, that means that never come back and sell anything on this building. So she had to open up and say, no, actually she was not a vendor, she was just finding out. So yeah, so I was never paid for that money.
Yeah,
I was not paid that money.
What happened when he found out?
Of course, he got into panic mode. It was a bit of a threat to him. And of course, it was also a threat to this woman vendor that I had moved along with. But after some time, I just told her, you know, just tell him that let him be comfortable. I will not, I'm not going to take any steps. But of course, this gave me the motivation to work, the motivation and the commitment to work and support the women vendors. And it is something I've been doing to make sure that I try to support these women vendors as much as possible. And I think if one time you must have seen on Ibamelia Chamba de vending fruits on the streets in 2017. It was also partly part of that work I had done, because that time I didn't have money as me. I didn't have any grants or any funding, but I needed somebody in a leadership position, and most preferably a woman, to walk this journey with me, so that we find solutions, we find better ways of income generating for these women vendors. And indeed, out of that work, to date, we have been able to scale 600 women vendors. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I guess the focus then has been on the women and not the men like that one, who we would have loved to know, but we won't ask for that information. Brenda, speak to me about what this manifesto is about and what it intends to achieve.
Thank you, Josephine. Before I start, I probably want to talk about SIHA. SIHA in full is Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa. We are a network of women rights organizations, and we work in the Horn of Africa. We are in 9 countries, Uganda, coastal areas of Kenya, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, and Somaliland. SIHA works towards empowering grassroots women's organizations to be able to defend and promote the rights of vulnerable women in the community. We also work towards fighting insubordination of women and fighting violence against women and girls. Now, SIHA decided to work with women street vendors because of the challenges we've already had here. What Achiro has said and the experiences from my colleague here, the challenges that women street vendors face are enormous. Not one institution can be able to address these challenges. Like she said, many of the women street vendors are widows. Many of them are living with HIV/AIDS. They are single mothers. The majority are actually also displaced persons from northern Uganda, who of course came to Kampala after the 20-year insurgency. So they are people who are living in, you know, lots of extreme poverty, if that's how I should put it. And that is why SIHA, you know, went out to be able to work with women street vendors. Of course, there are a number of organizations that are working towards empowering women in general, but very few are working towards empowering women street vendors in particular. That is why, as SIHA, we did support the women street vendors to come up with a manifesto. And this manifesto is a political document. It highlights the concerns of women street vendors, and it puts across issues or demands on how to address these challenges or these concerns that the women street vendors have. Now, this manifesto is targeted towards political actors and policymakers. There are a number of issues within the manifesto. Of course, maybe just to take a little bit, this manifesto was developed in consultation with the women street vendors. We had a series of consultative meetings with them, and they did prioritize a number of, areas or challenges that they face. So this manifesto highlights 7 key priority concerns that the women street vendors have. The first is health, and then there's also education, there's economic empowerment, there's leadership and representation of women street vendors. Another concern is on laws and policies, and then security and violence against the women street vendors. So this manifesto clearly highlights the challenges that the women street vendors face within the 7 thematic areas, and also puts across demands to policymakers, to political actors on how they want these concerns addressed.
I was looking through the manifesto as you spoke, and I think you left out operating and living environment. But you've got all of those in your head. That's that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Are these, when you listen to them, to Brenna speak about these 7 areas, are these the 7 areas of concern for you?
Yes.
Which is the most area of concern when you think about all of them? Which one would you like addressed first?
All of them, I'm saying all of them is very important to us, because we as a vendor, we are lacking so many things in our life. That's why we are vending. Like, let me say like this, me, I'm from northern Uganda. I was by Anna Choli. We was there. Corn was been disturbing us too much. We have lower education. At the time we are supposed to go to school, you see, you have to go and hide yourself, because corn is coming, killing people. You cannot wait to corn to get you there. LRA. Yes, that's why we end up lower education. Yes, and this one, like you are seeing at me, I'm lacking so many problems. Not me, I just to, as my friends. And education, we have lower education. We need at least government to give free education to our children, and also to empower us adult education. At least we have to go and learn something to experience our life.
All right, thank you so much for pointing those out, Florence. Let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight on the show, we are speaking about the Street Vendors Manifesto. And I was holding that manifesto. It's quite attractive. It's easy on the eye, but then it's also very nicely packaged and easy to read. And I think it's a great thing that you guys did there. I wanted to ask, does this cover the women outside of Kampala? Because usually we speak more about the street vendors in Kampala, and we forget, not that we forget, but we overlook the other areas of the country.
Okay, the women vendors manifesto actually covers women vendors across the country, because the challenges they go through are the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you speak about the challenges, so there are 7 of them. If you could both just help us quickly understand each of them.
In terms of health, the women street vendors have a number of challenges. They move, you know, like Achiro said earlier on, long distances. They carry the basket on their head. A lot of them already complain of, you know, persistent, you know, back pain. They move within car fumes, dust, and that already predisposes them to respiratory, you know, infections. Within the city center itself, there are no clean washrooms or changing rooms for the women. The areas where they are free, they're not clean. So many of them have recurrent urinary tract infections. We also know that healthcare in Uganda is quite expensive. If you go to government health facilities, if they probably will diagnose you and give you, you know, a list of drugs to go and procure from out, which money the women street vendors don't have. So therefore, the manifesto puts across demands, say, for example, to Ministry of Health, can healthcare be affordable? Can government health facilities have, you know, drugs? Can there be health insurance for women street vendors? In terms of public, I should say, like mobile health clinics, can these target women street vendors at, you know, the locations where they work? Because a number of times they are mobile clinics, but they're taken to the communities. So if it is family planning or cervical cancer screening,
Breast cancer,
HIV/AIDS, the women street vendors are not back home, so they miss out on a lot of those services.
And even just the awareness of all of this. But I know that from previous conversations I've had on this particular issue, it's come out that why are the women street vendors not taking up the spaces in the stalls, in the markets, you know, that have been put up. And so I guess in response to that, it would be quick or easy for someone to say, but there's space. Why are they not taking it up? I know that finances and paying rent and all of that come into play. But
I think, Josephine, like we said earlier on, a lot of these women live in extreme poverty. Someone has capital of like 30,000 shillings. They do not have that extra money to be able to pay rent. The markets that government has put in place are not affordable for the market, for the street vendors. And this is something that definitely they can't afford. If they are allocated space, it's maybe on the 3rd and 4th floor. And who would go on the 4th floor to buy mangoes?
To buy chewing gum.
Exactly. So it really puts them already off. And that, you know, puts them in a position where it is recurrent poverty. And because they live in poverty, they cannot educate their children, so it is like a vicious cycle of poverty.
I also wish to re-echo on the issue of having these women more visible. The women vendors have been neglected. Their work is not legally acceptable at the moment, and that means that not much attention is given to the women vendors. And this also means that their voices are not being heard by the different stakeholders. So through the manifesto, we wish to see these women vendors accepted because they contribute a lot to the economy of this country. They are also feeding families, they are educating citizens of this country. So we wish these women to be more visible. We wish them to take up leadership positions. We wish to see them on decision-making tables. If you look at the statistics of leadership of the different markets across the country, they are all male-dominated. You find that the top leadership is male-dominated, and that's where the decisions are made. So we wish to see these women take up leadership, supported into leadership, and their capacity built in also leadership. But we also wish to call upon the different stakeholders to support them economically. Of course, their profits are very minimal, and also the access to financial services is also actually not there. You find that the banks, the rates at which they lend out loans is really very high for them. So we also wish to call upon the different financial sectors, to banks to come and support these women.
I thought you were going to also speak about the law enforcement, officers and how they treat these women as though they are luggage carried and thrown on the back of pickups and things like that.
Yeah, so we appreciate that the KCCA is doing a great job in making sure that the city is clean and it's not congested, but we need KCCA also to appreciate that these women vendors have families back home and they need to survive. So we need at least designated areas around the city where these women can operate. Not all of them can occupy the markets, but if at all the city authority came up with their designated areas where some of these women could be located, that would also make a lot of meaningful participation in economic empowerment. But we also wish that
just to check in with Florence, would that be a solution for you if there were places specifically for you to operate?
Yes, it will be a solution to us, because if this one they put it in action, it can even change our life. That's why we are requesting government at least to come with this policy for this KCCA. At least if they can give us like lunches, we start to paying tax, we get a gazetted place. Yes, I think it will be better for us and for the security. If the government can give the security light in the community, it will be better. Even if you wake up late, the light is there. We cannot face so many challenges when we are going to the market.
Under the cover of darkness.
Yes, and for the leadership, at least we want someone, we want a representative from the grass level, at least to the member of parliament. At least the voice for the vendors, but the voice for the fellow women should be have.
When people are campaigning, it's campaign season, election season, do you listen to manifestos and say, this one has our issues, at the core of what they're saying, I will vote them? Do you pay attention to that?
I pay attention, but through this manifesto, they are not yet talking about it. That's why we are requesting some of the coming leader from 2021 to 2026, at least to cover this manifesto. As I'm contesting to a women councillor today. That's why this manifesto at least to be fixed, because some of our problem should be solved. That's why we are requesting. My manifesto this one was not yet out. I was talking just about the widow, single mother and orphan, at least government to include those people, at least to make their voice to be high, because we are just here in the street. We left kid at home, and sometimes if you get the kid, you cannot walk with the kid on your back. We need an organization to come and help us when we are going for work. We can get a place to take care of our children, and also we have disabled people there at our community. We have to support this thing. That's why SIA has come out to make a way to us. We are requesting some organization to come and help us, vendors and our community, to make sure our voice should be heard.
I would also wish to call upon the government, because the government has some funding targeting women and the youth, and actually a big population of the women vendors are young people. So we call upon the government to give priority to these women vendors through the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program and Fund, and also the Youth Livelihood Fund, to at least ensure that as these women struggle, at least they are able to access this government funding to reach to the very last person, and also not to have the strict requirements that usually limit them from accessing this funding.
Okay. I asked her a question, and I want to ask it to you. Why is it important for policymakers and political leaders to include addressing these issues of women street vendors in their manifestos?
I think, first of all, women street vendors are citizens of Uganda. So whether laws or policies that are put in place, they should also be able to favor the women street vendors. These women street vendors vote year in, year out, but their plight is not changing. They still face the same challenges every other year. So what we want right now is for the different political actors, the different politicians, to include issues of women street vendors into their manifesto. We want to see them put in place, you know, mechanisms or to address some of the issues that the women street vendors are facing, because from them they say, you know, they want change right now. And that is why, as SIHA, we did help them to come up with this manifesto. And yeah, we want the different actors to ensure that this manifesto is implemented.
Esther, I will ask you to give us your closing remarks in 1 minute. I know that a lot of people, sometimes you're in your car and you want to buy something from a street vendor, but then you're thinking, wait, they told us that's illegal, so do I not? And then am I not encouraging a behavior that is, you know, they've told us is wrong? In your closing remarks, just say something to that, but also tell us what you want us to take home from this conversation.
From this conversation, it's still an appeal to the different stakeholders to come out and support the women vendors, and also to encourage the women vendors also to come out and be able to speak for themselves. We wish them to become more confident. We wish them to break the ceiling so that they are not left behind. When it comes to the markets, we want to see them take up the leadership positions in the different markets. We also want to see many child care centers put up in the different markets, as Florence shared, that they have children and sometimes it's a bit difficult to take care of them. So if KCCA gave a room where the women vendors' children could be taken care of, then they will be able to make much more. But during this COVID time, I would also wish to call upon the different stakeholders to come in to support these women get some capital, because COVID affected many of them, especially the street vendors whose income is got from selling merchandise through the traffic. You know, when we all went back home, there was no traffic, so therefore the little they had, they used all of it, and many of them are actually back home.
All right, Brenda?
For me, it's really to call upon different stakeholders to implement this manifesto. A particular call would go to the Parliament of Uganda. We have 2 pending bills in Parliament, and that is the Sexual Offences Bill. We feel as SIHA that if this bill is passed into law, it would put some of the perpetrators of violence against not just the street vendors, but women in general, to book. And then the Marriage and Divorce Bill as well, that has been there for quite a number of years. And yeah, to the different political actors, please ensure that issues within this manifesto are incorporated within your manifesto. And as SIHA, we are also happy that out of the group of 250 women street vendors that we have worked with, we have about 8 of them who are standing for different leadership positions. And for us, this is definitely a plus, because they shall be able to advocate for, you know, their rights in the different leadership positions that they will take.
My request goes through to the government. They should make us to have the representative of vendors from the community to the member of parliament. And this manifesto should be fixed in other manifesto with some leaders, because we also vendors, we are citizens of Uganda. We also vote every year, but our issue was being not
ignored.
Yes, but this day at least we want some our problem to be
given attention.
Yes, our problem should be solved.
Yeah.
Yes.
To the everyday person who sees this woman every day as you walk past her or as you drive, please, we wish that you respect these women. These are women who are mothers, and they are mothers of this country. And for the men out there, do not sexually harass the women by touching their bodies or by verbally insulting them. We wish that the public acknowledges and appreciates their effort in taking care of the different families back home, and also for the contribution that they make to this country.
As we launch this Women Street Vendors Manifesto, it will run from 2021 to 2026, and the theme is making her visible. So we want to make the women street vendor visible. It is reclaiming and reframing the policy arena. We want to see policies in place that will favor women street vendors.
Okay.
On behalf of the women street vendors, on behalf of women rights organizations, leaders, we do officially launch this Women Street Vendors Manifesto that will run from 2021 to 2026. We ask the different political actors and policymakers to put in place strategies and address the demands that are incorporated within this Women Street Vendors Manifesto. Thank you.
I am the public at this point, so I applaud your efforts. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and congratulations on the manifesto. It's been a pleasure to have you in the studio. Florence Achiro, who is the Treasurer and Aguru Women Cooperative Society Limited, Brenda Bear from SIHA Network, and Esther Namboka Imuru, who is the ED of Girls Forum International. Thank you for taking the time. That brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.